Welcome to episode 102 of the Forward 50 podcast, where we interview people over 50 pursuing new direction for their lives. It's an opportunity for men and women to tell their stories, their way, and in their own words. I'm Greg Gerber, the founder of Forward 50, and your host for today's show. Today I'm excited to introduce Claudia Long. She is a multi-talented author, lawyer, and adventurer whose life is as colorful as the stories she writes. After decades in law, Claudia took her love for writing to the next level. She published the deeply researched historical fiction and cozy mysteries, with a touch of humor and a bit of steam. There's so much steam in some of her books that Claudia must publish them under a pen name so as not to cause problems in her legal career. Her latest book, Murder Without a Duck, brings a fresh twist to the mystery genre, blending intrigue with sharp wit. Beyond writing, Claudia is also a skilled arbitrator, an avid weaver, a passionate cook, and a devoted grandmother who finds joy in storytelling and creativity in all aspects of life. In this episode, we'll dive into her journey, her love for history, her experiences in publishing, and how she continues to find new ways to express herself, whether it's through food, words, or fiber arts. If you've ever wondered what's possible after turning 50, Claudia's story will prove the answer is anything you want it to be. Without further ado, please welcome Claudia Long to the show. Thanks for joining me today, Claudia. I really appreciate it. I understand you are from the beautiful Napa Valley region of California. How long have you been there?
Actually, I've been up here just about 3 years.
Okay.
And it's incredibly beautiful.
What attracted you to that area?
I was living in San Francisco Bay Area and for, I'd say about 42 years. And people come up here for pleasure all the time. And we really liked the farthest point of Napa Valley, where it really, the valley narrows, and it's the hot springs and mud baths and grapes and sulfury water and all kinds of mysterious things going on there. We used to come up here all the time. And when the pandemic hit, why don't we get a place? And then we thought, why don't we live here? And so we sold our house in the Bay Area, and it's not far. It's like an hour and 15 minutes from where we used to live, but sold our house and just moved in here permanently.
Is it cheaper to live in Napa Valley than it is in San Francisco?
Not at all.
No, not at all. It's nowhere cheap to live in California, is it?
First of all, but second of all, Napa Valley, we thought it might be cheaper, but it's emphatically not. Restaurants are all priced for tourists. And so you have to really find the places the locals go. And there's very little in the way of the things you need every day. So everything that there is a little pricier up here. To my dismay, I might add.
Sure. After you turned 50, it sounds like you became a writer. And what prompted you to get into that?
It's funny. I had been writing since my early 30s. Let's see, my daughter came along when I was 31, and I wrote my first full length. I used to write poetry, but everybody writes poetry, right? It was ghastly too. Don't ever try to read that stuff. It's horrible. Cringe. But when I was home with her for a little while, and then part-time and all that, I decided I would write a romance novel. And so I wrote one, and I sent it off, and I didn't know anything. I knew nothing, okay? And so I sent it off, and then I got a phone call, because that was back in the day, right? And this publisher said, we really like that, but it's in modern time. Can you write Regency? And I'm like, okay, I'm so stupid, right? I said, no.
And Regency is what?
Regency is the period of English royalty that is, I think, and correct, Regency readers are going to just jump all over me, but I would say the late 1700s, early 1800s.
Okay, the golden age of the royalty.
Yeah, and so I was like, no, I can't. And so I had no idea that this was like a big deal. And after that, I continued to just write on the side. But after I turned 50, I did a lot of things in my late 40s, and right when I turned 50, I got my black belt in Taekwondo. I was bat mitzvahed at 53, things that you don't usually you do quite a bit younger, especially the Taekwondo. Let me tell you, trust me, do it when you're
Yes.
younger. Not for a 50-year-old, but I did spar at nationals, got a bronze. But yeah, it was pretty cool.
That's
But anyway,
impressive.
I have a lot of energy. And then I decided, and meanwhile, I had been writing, oh, how do I say this? Steamy romance under a pen name, because I'm also a lawyer, right? You know that,
No,
right?
I did
So
not. Okay.
yeah, sorry, I'm a lawyer, and of course I had to write these rather extremely steamy romances under a pen name because you can't really. Also, I have kids in school, and you just can't do this. When I was about 53 or so, I said to myself, I want to write a serious novel, a novel that really has weight and impact. And so I did. I wrote Josefina's Sin, and it didn't have that much weight and impact. And it is a little bit steamy still because I was in the habit, but still, it was a real historical, deeply researched novel. And I was really lucky. I got an agent. She sold it to Simon and Schuster, and it came out when I was 56.
Okay. That's
That was
cool.
my launching into, oh, how do we say, real writing? But although I'll tell you, those steamy romances, I still get royalties.
Are you still practicing as a lawyer or have you stepped away
I
from that?
am.
You are.
No,
Okay.
I am. About half time.
Okay.
I practice as a arbitrator and mediator in employment discrimination cases and some complex business dissolutions, as well as your garden variety real estate lawsuits, which are, of course, the bread and butter of practically everything.
I can imagine.
So,
Do
yeah.
you want to tell people what your pen name is or are we keeping that
I
secret?
cannot.
You
No,
cannot.
I'm so
Okay.
sorry. I'm
Not
so
a
lock the door.
Okay, very good. But that's neat that you're still getting royalties from that all these years
I
later.
know.
They
Well,
must
that
be
stuff
some really
sells.
steamy stuff.
Exactly. There you go. There you go. It's like that stuff sells. But yeah.
How many
And
books have
so
you
that's the
published?
job. I'm sorry.
How many books have you published since then?
Since
Or
then,
since,
in the real world
right.
of
Yes.
publishing, I have 7
Okay.
books, and I have 2 more on the docket. My most recent book, of course, is Murder Without a Duck,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a cozy, edge of cozy mystery in a small, grape growing town in Napa. Just, I don't know why,
Surprise.
you
Yes.
know. And then I have another book in the other series that I did, the Zara and Lily series, which is much more intense and heavier and more deeply researched. And that, okay, so book 2 of Murder of the Duck books
Mm-hmm.
um, comes out in August, and book 3 of the Zara and Lily books comes out the following August. I think it's September 2026 is when that one comes out.
So when you say you're researching these books, it's not just fiction that you're creating out of your mind. There's some historical backing or
Well,
information in it.
yes, in the sense, okay, there are 3 books in, well, the first one I wrote was Josefina's Sin, like I
Mm-hmm.
said, and then that took place in 1690 in colonial Mexico. And so the second book in that series, The Duel for Consuelo, is in 1711, 17, more or less. And then the third one is 1753. And so, yes, those were deeply researched
Mm-hmm.
books. And then I did a Women in the Labor Movement in 1920 San Francisco. But since you can't sell a book like that, I did it through the eyes of a prostitute.
Okay.
And so that did up a bit and
Mm-hmm.
got it sold. And that took a great deal of research as well because the labor movement, it's just one of my pet interests in 1920 in San Francisco. So that took a lot of research. And then the Zara and Lily books, they are contemporary, but there are flashbacks to both World War II in Nine Tenths of the Law and the immigration period of the 1910, 1920, when there was a lot of immigration from the Hungary, Ukraine, Odessa area because of the pogroms. And so I did a lot of research about that, and that's in book 2. And so, yeah, it takes not just the plot and the
Right.
world building, but
What
uh,
attracted you to these kind of Latin themes?
Oh, I grew up in Mexico City.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Super.
yeah. I grew up in Mexico City. I'm American born, but I was 4 when my family moved us there, so that was where we went, right? And you
Okay.
know how when you're a little kid, you just that's what we're doing now,
Right.
right? And so, although I was already speaking English as a 4-year-old, my first language as a elementary school kid and all of that was Spanish. And we came back to the States when I was 11. And so I've been here since.
That would give you a good foundation in Spanish, I would imagine.
Well, yeah, it
7
was my
years living abroad.
language.
Yes,
Yeah, it was,
absolutely.
and so now I have this awful California accent that I cannot get rid of. And I hear it and I'm like, who is this person? I sound like an American who's fluent in Spanish, which is what I am,
Hmm.
but it's not what I spoke when I was a kid.
Okay, that makes sense. People comment about my Wisconsin accent all the time, and I guess I can't get rid of that either.
You'll never get rid of that.
That's
Yeah.
right. One of your books, Nine Tenths of a Law, was optioned for a movie. How exciting! Tell us about that?
It was dumb luck on my part because I thought, quite cinematic. And so I thought, gee, I wonder how books get optioned for movie. I had no idea. So there's this forum online and
Mm.
Facebook, and I posted, would somebody be willing to explain to me how books get turned into movies? Not please turn my book into a movie, but teach me about how
Mm-hmm.
that happens. And this woman who has a production company said, yeah, I'll do that. She's got a whole bunch of podcasts, much like you, with all of the how to make a movie kind of thing. She said, listen to this in this podcast, these chapters of the podcast, and then we'll talk on the phone. And so we did. And she was like, I want that book.
Ah, how lucky are
And I
you
was
for that? That's
I
neat.
know, right? I
Okay.
was like, and so she did an option, and this was a couple of years ago. It's difficult to get funding
Right.
and don't want to get overly political, but it does have World War II Jewish themes, flashbacks to Holocaust and to other events because it's larger than that. And the climate for that right now is not welcoming. So it's been a little bit of a slog, but she'll figure it out. And
Okay.
they've renewed the option, so I guess they still want to do
Wonderful.
it.
That's neat. I
Yeah.
did not realize that authors were able to option their books like that. I just assumed that somebody read it and then approached the author and said, we want to make it into a movie, but you can do that in advance of having somebody express that interest. That's cool.
It's the option itself belongs to the production company.
Hmm.
And she, yeah, you're right. That is how what you're describing is how it works. The difference here was that I was curious. So I just posted, how does this happen? And it was then that she said to me, as you have just described, I would like to option your book.
Okay.
Yes, you're absolutely right. That's the order, but it was preceded in this case by my wandering around on Facebook groups going, how does this happen? Can
Right.
somebody tell me?
That's neat.
Explain it like you would to a 6-year-old.
So, would somebody who is interested in writing a movie, would they be better off writing a book instead and then hoping to turn it into a movie or just going right into screenwriting?
Oh, that
Mm.
I am in no position to give
Okay.
advice. I would guess you would want to write a screenplay.
Screen.
And in fact, I took a screenplay writing class because I was thinking about, I didn't know how this was going to happen. Maybe I'd
Hmm.
write the screenplay or something. Turns out I have no talent in that direction. It's completely different.
It is. Yes.
It's absolutely a totally different art, one which I like words, I like to talk, I like,
Right. You don't want to get into the technical aspects of zoom in on this and
right.
all that kind of stuff.
No, I
Okay.
have no idea.
You
So,
specialize in mysteries and fiction, right? Do you do any nonfiction writing?
no, I
No?
don't.
Okay.
I think writing briefs is about the closest to nonfiction I've gotten. A little fiction goes into them, but
Yeah.
in this case, it's much nicer to write for a willing audience.
Right.
It's all fiction, all novels, and the mysteries I love to read mysteries,
Hmm.
but I didn't know that 9/10 of the law was going to be classified as a mystery. To me, it was just literary fiction.
Okay.
But both my agent and the publisher that picked it up both said this is a mystery.
Okay.
So I guess the structure was a mystery. Murder Without a Duck is a mystery.
Hmm.
It's a edge of cozy. And when I say edge of cozy, it's because it's the bad guy says some bad words. And in a regular cozy, you don't have bad words. And there is a hint or more of sex.
Okay.
And so you don't have you don't have sex in a cozy.
Okay. That makes
That
sense.
sounds like that should be like on a cross-stitch sampler, don't you think? You
Yes,
don't have sex
absolutely.
on a cozy.
That sounds like something my mother would have said when I was a teenager. What do you like most about writing mysteries?
The thing about mysteries is that there's the great thing is that at the end, the bad guy is always caught,
Right. That's
you
always a
know?
happy ending in that regard.
Yes. And even if there's some mysteries are strewn with dead bodies
Mm-hmm.
and mine, I'll tell you in a minute why not, but there has to be at least one, right?
Right.
And the thing about mysteries is that there's redemption at the end. Even if there's a cliffhanger, even if there's hints that maybe another conspirator is still out there and there's book two coming along, still there's the wrong is done and the world is put back to rights.
Correct.
And I think in why suddenly I was writing a cozy mystery that was funny as opposed to these other heavier things. I think I wrote this in November of 2023. So we
Okay.
know the world had gotten very bad
Mm-hmm.
uh, after October 2023. And to me, I needed something that was funny, that was just frothy, and where things came out right in the end. I
That,
needed that for me. And so I wrote it for me, and it looks to me like other people need that too right now.
mm-hmm.
And so
I would
it's,
agree. The world is getting to be just darker and darker all the time and more
yeah,
stress in our lives. So these opportunities to escape into an idyllic world where justice always prevails is
yeah,
probably very appealing to people.
yes.
But it's
And
neat
even
that you're a
from
lawyer who's writing mystery books and things like that about that kind of justice.
yeah, because it doesn't always come out right
Mm.
in courts, although they are generally fairly middle. And interestingly, this is an aside, but people talk about, oh, juries and all that. In my experience, juries, however they get there, tend to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
They tend to see through all the smoke and mirrors and all the garbage, and they tend, not always, but they tend to do the right thing. And it's always people malign juries, and there's a lot of reasons not to have them in every case, but they tend to get there in the end and
Mm-hmm.
to get it right.
That's
Our system does work.
yes. You aren't just involved in writing as somebody who is well over 50. There are other things that you're doing too, like weaving. How did you get involved with weaving and what kinds of things do you weave?
Oh, weaving is great. Okay. Weaving is something I do that I do not do well and that I do with a great deal of passion.
Okay.
As a lawyer and just how I am, tend to gravitate to the things I do well. And I think we
Hmm.
all do. We get satisfaction from our accomplishment and everything. I was with my sister plays a large role in a lot in 9/10 of the law and that series. But I was with my sister and she took me on a tour of Rockefeller's house or something. And there were these examples of shibori weaving. And I was like, that's beautiful. And I looked at it again as we went around the display cases and everything. I was like, I want to do that. I want to weave.
Hmm.
So I signed up for a class. This was, I'd say, 10 years ago. I signed up for a class and I was smitten. I would dream about it. And yet I'm not visual. I'm not particularly orderly in that sense. And so I weave, every grandkid gets a blanket. In fact, I wish I had known you were going to ask me because I mailed off the blanket to the future grandchild who's due in a month, like day before yesterday.
Mhm.
So I don't have it here, but to weave with plant-based yarns, but I've just discovered alpaca.
Um,
And I'm allergic to wool, so I
Okay.
can't use wool. And the vibrant colors, and then I discovered spinning. And so I've started spinning alpaca yarn,
Okay.
and it's spinning is meditation. And somebody else, much smarter than I am, and I can't remember who it was, said that fiber crafts are often meditation, yarn meditation with the side benefit of a headband.
I think
Because
Gandhi was a
ultimately,
big spinner as well. According to his movie, if I recall, he was always at some device that seemed to be spinning yarn. My grandmother was into quilting, and so it was also very meditative for her as well to be in that.
and it's quilting is really hard, but spinning is completely meditative and weaving is too. There's an aspect of it that you're in this place in your head where you're creating this cloth. And if you think about it, this is it's one of the oldest crafts ever because we wear
Right.
clothing, right? And so just weaving and spinning, it's wonderful to know that if I have a hunk of, they call it roving, but it's like the floss of, or the fur of an animal or the floss of a flax plant, eventually I would have clothing.
So spinning is the art of turning that into thread. Is that right? Okay. And weaving is entirely different. That's where you're actually creating either a rug or a wall hanging. Is that right?
Or a shawl
That's right.
or
Okay.
scarf or a blanket. And there are many different kinds of looms. My
Hmm.
preference is what's called a rigid heddle loom, and it's smallish and much very manageable, so I can be as creative as I want, and it doesn't require that I commit to an entire floor loom with four or six or eight or 12 or 16
Hmm.
shafts, where your rigid heddle has one. I have a second one, and then I've created some other shafts with pickup sticks and other, anyway, you don't want to get
Okay.
into that level of detail, but you can create incredible things and you just did it. It's
Hmm.
yours. But
Is
again, I'm not there. I belong to a guild and we do show and tell. And I'm always like I'm the mascot at this point. It's like, this is what I did. And they're presenting these flowing, gorgeous, deeply patterned things. And I'm like, here's my.
it's neat that
So
you're doing. Is this something that you started after you turned 50 as well?
yeah, so I started
Yes.
10
Okay.
years ago. I just turned 70.
Hmm.
I was 60 when I started weaving.
Okay. Very good.
So yeah.
That's somebody who's just starting out with quilting, who is, here's what I made. And then you're going up against some of these Amish women who make these
Right.
vibrant, detailed quilts. And you're like, oh my, but it's good start. And you're finding a lot of joy in doing that.
Exactly. And maybe I'll get better at it. Maybe I won't, but I've stuck with it for 10 years because I love it,
Exactly.
you
A
know?
lot of people find it relaxing to be able to do that. And like you said, you've got something that you can create or that you have evidence of what you've done. So you can share your love and your joy of doing this with your grandchildren. My grandmother gave
Exactly.
each of her grandkids a quilt. And it was just,
Wow.
it's a family keepsake. In fact, her funeral had at the church that we were at, everybody brought their quilt in. And so there were dozens and dozens of quilts on the back of all of the pews during her service. And it just, you could see the love that was poured into each one of those. And they're so
Absolutely.
unique, in tune to the likes and wishes or hobbies of the individual who is the recipient of that quilt.
Yeah, there's nothing like it.
So you're creating weaves or weaving and creating things, but you're also cooking. That seems to be a passion that you've taken up. Is that something you've embraced more after you've been 50, or have you always been
No,
involved in
I'm going to
cooking?
have to go backwards on that one for
Okay.
you. In college, about a million years ago, I got it in my head that I wanted to be a chef, and that was before all the women chefs.
Okay.
So I went to a local restaurant and said, I want you to hire me, and I was in college, and most of them said no. And we don't have women in the kitchen. We don't have girls in the kitchen. I
What?
was
That's used to be the only thing girls could do was be in the
right,
kitchen.
but not in a professional kitchen. It
Right.
was always the guy, right?
That's right.
And finally, I found one who was willing to let me work, and I learned a lot. And then I applied to the hotel school in Lausanne, Switzerland, and I got in, and then I worked, but I had to wait a year and a half to go after graduation. And I worked at a French restaurant in New York as working with the butcher. They had their own butcher. And so I
Hmm.
learned how to do meat cutting and things like that. And then I worked in the only all-woman kitchen in Washington, D.C. In 1976, in the summer of 1976. And then I I had my acceptance to the hotel school waiting for me, and I decided not to do it.
Oh,
Yeah, I
you,
decided to go to law school.
okay.
And so decided, I talked with my mom about it, and she said, cooking is something you can always do all your life, and you do it for your family. And this is not something you're not going to be doing. It's just rather than doing it professionally.
Hmm.
And she was right. And so I've been cooking forever. I remember even as a little kid going into the kitchen and making what we used to call cochinadas, which is like messes,
Hmm.
disgusting things. Because I would go and I'd mix things up and I'd present them and say, "Here's a dish," and it's no, it isn't. So
Did,
I've been doing that all my life.
did you specialize in any particular kind of cuisine? Oh,
No,
okay.
and in Nine Tenths of the Law, the mother in the story, Aurora, says, and I'm quoting my mother in that, says, "I'm not a kitchen patriot.
Okay.
Cook everywhere."
Okay. Super.
Yeah, so I learned all different styles, and yeah, I've taken many classes, and it's something you do every night,
Hmm.
right? Every
Right.
single night the family needs to eat. Might as well make it nice.
I like it that you identified this thing that you were passionate about at a rather young age. This is a very common story that I hear from a lot of people. Then they were
Uh-huh.
persuaded to pursue something more practical, in your case, law, but the desire to do that cooking and to experiment and create and make delicious things for other people to enjoy, that stayed with you all your life. Now that you're
Yeah.
older and you have more time, you can put it into that cooking and really make a festive occasion for other people to enjoy. I love that.
Yeah, that's very true. Interesting that you put it that way because I made real dinners almost every night, even though I was practicing law and had the two small kids and all this other thing. I still made real dinner every night. At 70, I'm starting to feel like, you know what? Maybe I don't want to do that every night. But still, for the festive occasion, it's wonderful. It's just absolutely fantastic to do that. They're my son's in LA, my daughter lives up near Placerville, and getting them to come up at the same time and have everybody here,
Mm-hmm. Right.
you probably know, it's
Right.
hard.
Oh, it's, as a single person, it's very hard to cook for yourself. In fact, I had a session with somebody a year or two ago
I'm not single.
who's,
I'm not
no,
single.
I am
You are?
single. I am
You are.
single.
Oh,
So to cook just
oh,
for
that's
me is a
really
real,
hard.
yeah, really hard. This
Really
woman
hard.
loved to cook, and she had cooked for her husband for years, and he raved about her dishes and all that kind of stuff. Then he died, and she wasn't sure what she was going to do. And I
Yeah.
suggested, why don't you invite a bunch of single people from your church over to your house and teach them how to cook, or just cook a meal with everybody gathered around talking and meeting each other. She fell in love with that idea. And I guess she
Wonderful. How
jumped at that.
beautiful.
Yeah, so she is impacting the lives of other people now with her love for cooking.
It's beautiful.
It
It's
is.
actually chilling.
I know
It's
it
really
is. It's
beautiful.
really neat when people can utilize their passions to help other people and to really spread their own joy and their love for whatever craft it is, whether it's weaving or cooking or writing. It's
Yeah.
there. Yeah, that's neat.
Have you been the beneficiary of some of those magnificent dinners, I hope?
No, I did not. She was living in another state when I was talking
Oh,
to her,
okay.
but yes, that would be neat.
least you could do is
Yes.
invite you.
Yes. You love chocolate, though. Do you create any chocolate concoctions that you
Oh yeah, yeah.
specialize in? What do you like?
Chocolate, it's a close call between chocolate and coffee,
Okay.
but I think chocolate wins in the end, but it's very close. It's neck and neck. And so, yeah, in fact, tomorrow is Valentine's Day, and I have this little special thing that I make for two, and it's like a lava cake, but it's just two little cakes, and they're molten chocolate in the middle and then chocolate on the outside. And then I
Oh,
put berries around it and a little whipped cream or a little creme fraiche. And it's my Valentine's special. And I only have one Valentine. I've had the same Valentine now for,
oh,
let's see, we will be 45 years married in the fall. So 48 years
oh my
together.
goodness. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So I will make my Valentine.
That's neat.
It's
It doesn't sound like it's very good for calorie watchers, but my goodness, I bet that's delicious for a special Valentine.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
Valentine's Day, we don't count
Hmm.
calories on
How
Valentine's
many
Day.
grandchildren do you have?
Two and a half. No,
Two and a half.
two and the one on the roof.
What kinds of things do you get to do with them? Do they live
Because
nearby?
they don't live close, but they don't live far.
Okay.
It's like exactly the wrong amount. It's about a 3 hour drive. And my daughter, her husband is a firefighter.
Ooh.
So he's gone a lot because we have a lot of fires.
Hmm.
And so she's doing the three-ring circus by herself and she works. And so it's hard to get everybody all in the same place at the same time. But they were here in December. And one of the things that I really love to do is watch them play. I they're really nowadays kids are on screens, even the
Exactly.
4 year old on
Hmm.
screen and
Yep.
everything. I got these paper blocks that look like bricks. I don't know if you remember those. They're about a foot by 6 inches, some of them, and then different sizes, and put them all together. And there's all these paper or cardboard, that's the word,
Cardboard.
block.
Right. Hmm.
And just put them out there. And next thing, the screens are thrown to the side and towers are being built. And the younger one is knocking over the tower the older one built. And those are the kinds of things that I love to watch them play. And the other thing I love to do is read to them and take them to our local bookstore. Even though Calistoga only has 5,000 people in it, we have a magnificent bookstore. And so I take them whenever they come out. This, okay, Granny's going to take us to the bookstore
Oh.
and let them pick out any books they want. I buy them all the books. Mom, my daughter is, okay, one book, one book. I'm like, no, they can
Oh.
have all the books that they want. And so we do that. And then one of my grandchildren, the oldest one, has just a real knack for putting things together. So I buy these puzzles and toys that you put together. And I just love to watch him do it. And the younger one, basically, he's still in the knocking it over phase, you know? So those are the things I love to do. And I don't know about this third one because I've not met him yet. He's still in mama's tummy there, you
Still
know?
under
And
development. That's right.
but my son and my daughter are absolute opposites in every possible way, except for the fact that they're both wonderful people. That's the overlap. And so I imagine that this next grandson is going to be very different
Okay.
from my other two.
That's neat. Have you ever thought of writing a children's book?
No, I haven't. My
Okay.
sister has. My sister and I, we talk a lot, and she's thought about it, and she did a thing with her son that she took him to Paris a number of times because she's a languages teacher. And so she would take her son when he was small and take photos. And so she made this really cool children's book about Paris, a little kid in Paris, but it never really went anywhere. But yeah, I think my stories are a little dark.
I've talked to writers who write books for their grandchildren. They just little stories that they have published at one of these cheapo publishing places, but it's
Uh-huh.
just they incorporate the kids into the story and then read the story to the kids and it becomes a favorite. I just wondered if you'd ever done anything like that, but no,
No, but
okay.
I think that probably when my sister has grandchildren, she's not there yet. Her kids are a
Hmm.
little younger. She would be the one who would do that for
Yes, you,
them.
you do not want to be reading your steamy novels to your grandchildren.
Or murder mysteries or
Exactly. Right.
flashbacks to the Holocaust. No,
That's
we're
right.
not doing
I
that.
love that. If you could turn the clock back, is there anything you'd do differently?
Yeah,
What would you
I
do?
think I would. I think it was a big adventure to come and settle in California. My family had moved from Mexico to New York and they all were there. And my husband and I took off the day after graduation from law school and came to California and stayed. I think in retrospect, I would have loved to live elsewhere.
Hmm.
I would have loved to live in Paris. I would have loved to live in Madrid. I would have loved to lived for a year in Asia, someplace, Tokyo, something like that.
Hmm.
In other words, we settled down.
Right.
We were young. We were 21, 22 when we met and got married at 24 and 25. And we settled down in California,
Hmm.
3,000 miles from our families. Yes, indeed. That was an adventure. If I did it differently, I would have taken the kids, moved along, gone other places as my family did with me.
To a completely different culture, it sounds like, than the one that you're living in now, or that you even
Yes,
grew up in New York.
New York, New Mexico
Hmm.
City, and then New York. And my kids, 100% Californians. And my son's traveled quite a bit, but he's an actor. He's performed and he lived in London for a year and he lived in New York. But my kids are true Californians and I would like to have explored more.
Do you do
But
any
you know
travel?
what? I'm only 70. I can
That's
still do
right.
it.
I was going to ask if you do any traveling now.
We go someplace now the kids are totally launched and off on their own and everything. We went to Scandinavia. We went to Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, which was really cool.
Hmm.
We'd never been there. We want to go one big place every year.
Good idea.
We haven't really quite done that yet, but we would very much like to. We're going to New Orleans, which is not like that, but we're going in early September because BoucherCon, the big mystery conference,
Hmm.
the annual Mystery Writers and Readers Conference, it's the biggest one, and that's going to be in New Orleans. So,
That'll be.
yeah.
Do you have any advice for people over 50 who are struggling to find meaning or purpose for their life on how to identify that and pursue it?
Well, I would say, and this I apply to everything, it gets better.
Hmm.
It does. And what they say, every storm rains itself out. After, I think hope is probably the most important thing in our lives. And it applies to everybody. And so I think if you were struggling, you turn 50, you feel like you've lost your beauty, you're no longer procreating. Those are things that drive us, right? Perhaps health challenges and everything begin. The kids are in a bad state because kids don't grow up as fast as we did. And so and it looks so dark. There's hope.
Hmm.
There's hope. And if anything I would offer to anybody is look to hope, look to optimism, and try it.
Hmm.
Whatever it is, try it. Even if you're as bad at it as I am at weaving, try it because you don't know until you
Exactly.
try it.
That's what we encourage a lot of people to do. In fact, our new thing is that purpose is not something you discover, it's something you create. So there's something in you that you may discover you really, and that becomes your purpose or gives your life meaning and passion. So trying out these different things when you have the time to do it, that's an ideal way to identify something to get excited about.
And even when there's losses,
Yes,
you have to keep hope.
absolutely. How can people connect with you if they'd like to get in touch?
If you'd like to get in touch, the first of all, I'm going to give you my email because you're always welcome to email me.
Okay.
Claudia Long, author at Gmail. You can certainly find me on Facebook, Claudia Long Author, and Instagram, and they're all the same, Claudia
Okay.
Long, and Threads, and I'm not doing TikTok right now, but Threads and Instagram and Facebook. And I have a website, which is www.claudia.com. And I think my handle for all the socials is Claudia H. Long. I always
Okay.
forget that it
Okay.
is. It's Claudia H. Long.
I'm sure
And
we
so
could.
I'm on all the socials that you'd be looking for. And I'd love to connect. I love to connect with readers and listeners. And we didn't talk much about the duck book, but the duck book is out there. It's fun. And Murder Without a Duck is out there. It's fun.
Is that
And it's
your
something
most recent book?
that's the most recent.
Okay.
And so let's see if I can hold it up. I know I've got a blurred
Sure.
screen, so you probably can't see it, but
Okay.
it's Murder Without a Duck. And that's something to read in these very odd times just to get away and good triumphs. So,
And that's a humorous book, is that right?
yes,
Okay.
it's a mystery, but it's got a lot of humor and some really bad duck puns. And I'm really sorry about that.
That's all right, but people who like mysteries but need something a little bit more bright and lively will really enjoy that book.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, we'll link to it in the show notes for sure. But thank you very much for sharing your story today. It was a pleasure meeting you, and I wish you the best of luck going forward.
Likewise, thank you for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure speaking with Claudia Long today and learning about her incredible journey from law to literature. She's a very versatile writer, creating things from steamy romances under her pen name to crafting historical fiction and intriguing mysteries. In fact, her latest book, Murder Without a Duck, is a perfect example. It's a combination of a lighthearted mystery set in the heart of Napa Valley, yet it's full of wit, charm, and even a few duck puns. However, Claudia's story is about more than just writing. She's a firm believer in lifelong learning and creativity, whether it's researching complex historical events for her novels, embracing the meditative art of weaving, or perfecting decadent chocolate desserts in her kitchen. As a grandmother, she finds joy in sharing stories, building block towers with her grandkids, and passing on a love of books with every trip to the local bookstore. Her message for people over 50 is one of resilience, hope, and discovery. She encourages people over 50 to try something new, even if they're bad at it, because joy isn't in perfection, it's in the process. Whether you're picking up a new hobby, changing careers, or finally writing that novel you've been dreaming about, Claudia's story is proof there's always room for a new adventure. If you'd like to connect with Claudia or check out her books, you can find her online at www.claudiahlong.com or follow her on Facebook and Instagram. Her book, Murder Without a Duck, is available on Amazon and in other bookstores. That's all for this week's show. If you'd like to start living a more meaningful life, I encourage you to download our free guide to finding purpose, which is available at www.forwardfrom50.com. I'll have another inspirational interview on the next episode of the Forward from 50 podcast. Thanks for listening.